In this video, we're going to be going over a couple questions off of solving quadratics by factoring exercise B. So, our directions say solve each quadratic below by factoring. Show your work. So remember, the different methods of factoring that we've learned are factoring by a GCF, factoring using factor sum charts, factoring using bottoms up, and factoring by grouping. So we're going to go and take a look at number 2. So your first step is always to check for a GCF, and especially when your polynomial looks like this. Because this has two terms, there's a greater chance that it's asking for me to factor by taking out a GCF. So here, because I only have two terms, I'm going to press menu 5 one time. I'm going to go ahead and enter in my coefficients, 3, 15, into the calculator. And we end up seeing that between those two numbers, the GCF is going to be 3. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 as my GCF. And then the second question to ask yourself when you are finding a GCF is there a common variable? So in other words, between these two terms, do they both contain the letter N? The answer is yes. So here I'm going to be able to factor out a 3N from both of my terms. So now I divide. Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and n squared divided by n gives me n. So here I have 1n, and then we have 15n divided by 3n. Well, 15 divided by 3 gives us 5, and n divided by n cancels out, and this equals 0. So in this problem, I factored by taking out a GCF. I'm not going to do anything else with this in regards to factoring, but now I want to solve. So 3n is a factor, and n plus 5 is its own factor. So we're going to set each of these factors equal to 0, and our next step is to solve for the variable n. So looking at my first equation, 3 and n are multiplying each other. So I want to do the opposite, and I want to divide by 3 on both sides. Here I end up with n equals 0 divided by 3, which gives us 0. Looking at my second equation, again, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I end up with n equals -5. Now remember to check to see if you got the correct answer. You can always go into your graphs and you can type in your equation. So here I'm going to type in 3x squared plus 15x. Your calculator is not able to graph your graph or your quadratic with the variable n. So we want to change them to x's. Now when we press enter, I again want to see where my graph is crossing over the x-axis. Because remember, when I'm finding, or what I'm solving for are my zeros, my x-intercepts. So to check for my x-intercepts, I'm going to press menu 6, 1. And here I get this dash line pop up. I'm going to place this dash line on the left side, press enter, scroll over. I see that my first 0 is at -5, 0. Again, pressing menu 6, 1 again. And I see that my second 0 is at 0, 0 as well. So again, that just confirms that both of my x's are correct. Now, another way that you can write out your answer is by using a brace. So that would look something like this. And you would list out your solutions from least to greatest. So this would be from -5 to 0. So it looks something like that. Now, guys, when we're talking about the words zeros, you can see this referred to a couple different names. You can see x-intercept, zeros, and solutions. Those are the 3 ways that you will see or know what we're asking for. Let's go to move on. I'm not going to do number 7 with you, but I do want to explain it to you. When you look at number 7, it says, which statement is true about g of x equals x squared minus 576 is true. Now, guys, when you look at this problem, it should kind of be alarming you that this is a special case because, one, I only have 2 terms, and my middle term, the bx term, is missing. So here in this problem, this is a special case. So this is in the form of a squared minus b squared. And our goal is to take the square root of the first term, take the square root of the second term, and put this into the form of a plus b times a minus b. So that's all the information I really want to give you there, because if I do it with you, that's the only problem that's like this on our worksheet. Okay, number 10. I want to look at number 10 with you. Number 10 is already in factored form, guys. I don't have to do any factoring here. So here, I just want to take each of my factors and I want to set them equal to 0. So looking at my first equation, looking at my first factor, m plus 4 equals 0, I want to solve for m. So here I'm going to move m over to the, I'm going to move 4 over to the other side by subtracting. I'm going to drop down m and we have m equals -4. Looking at my second equation, we have 4m plus 3 equals 0. So first step, I'm going to move over the 3 using the inverse operation. Drop down 4m equals -3. Last step, divide by 4. So here I end up with m equals -3 over 4. So here you can leave it like this as your answer, or you can choose to write it in a brace. And you are going to write out your solutions from least to greatest. So here this would be -4 and -3 over 4. So again, if you wanted to, you could put this into your calculator and you can check to see if those are your solutions or your x-intercepts on your graph. Okay, the last question I would like to do with you is number 12. So number 12, we have 3v squared minus 10v equals 8. Now guys, very first thing, remember is that your equation always has to be set equal to 0. So our first step, I'm going to go ahead and move over 8. And when I move it over to the left-hand side, remember we're using the inverse operations. Now guys, our goal is to get this in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So in this case, when I arrange these three terms, I'm going to put this in the form of 3v squared minus 10v minus 8 equals 0. So from here, our next step is to factor. So we're going to factor using the bottoms up method. So I'm going to slide and multiply. 3 times 8 gives me 24. Right here, I'm not paying attention to signs. So from here, I want to list out factors of 24. So I'm going to go into my graphs, 24 divided by x, and then Control T. We see that our factors are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and then 4 times 6. Next step, I'm going to go look at the sign in front of C. Since it's negative, this means I'm going to find the two factors that subtract to give me 10, which are 2 and 12. Now, I want to determine the signs. Remember, if I'm subtracting, this means that my signs are different. One is positive, one is negative. So I look at my middle term. I want to make this a negative 10v. So that means I'm going to have a positive 2 and a negative 12. So setting up two sets of parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and put v at the beginning of both, and I am substituting in those two factors. My next step is to divide by my leading coefficient before I reduce. So if I try to reduce my first factor, 2 over 3 does not reduce. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and do bottoms up, and my first factor is 3v plus 2. Looking at my second factor, 12 divided by 3, that gives me 4. So here, this reduces to 4. So now that we have factored this quadratic, our next step is to set each of our factors equal to 0. Once I've set that equal to 0, our next step is to solve for v. So looking at my first equation, first step, I'm going to subtract over 2, and I'm left with 3v equals -2. My next step, divide by 3 on both sides, and I end up with v equals -2/3. Looking at my next equation, we have v minus 4 equals 0. So first step, move over the 4 using your inverse operations, and we end up with v equals a +4. One last thing I want to point out to you guys, on number 13, it says, what is the positive solution? So on this problem, you will factor it like normal, and then you will set each factor equal to 0, and you will still solve. However, you are only going to box in the question that, or the solution that is positive. So for example, on number 12, if I was asking you that on this problem, I would only have you box in v equals 4 because that's the only positive solution. Or if I was asking you for the negative solution, I would only have you box in v equals negative 2/3. Okay, so if you did not, so that was a refresher going over solving quadratics by factoring. Please make sure you finish exercise A first before you finish completing this assignment. Again, this was just to serve as a refresher for you, and I hope this helped, and I will see y'all tomorrow.